Edmund Rich was a 13th-century Archbishop of Canterbury in England. Today he is remembered for his connection to St Edmund Hall, Oxford, St Edmund's College, Cambridge, St Edmund's School, Canterbury and St Edmund's College, where Early life and career. Edmund was born on the 20th of November, circa 1180, in Abingdon in Berkshire, 7 miles south of Oxford, England. It was the feast of St. Edmund the Martyr, so he was given the name Edmund. He was the oldest of 4 children. Rich was an epithet sometimes given to his wealthy merchant father. It was never applied to Edmund or his siblings in their lifetimes. Edmund may have been educated at the monastic school in Abingdon. His early studies were in England, but he completed his higher learning in France at the University of Paris. About 1195, in company with his brother Richard, he was sent to the schools of Paris. He studied at the universities of Oxford and Paris and became a teacher about 1200, or a little earlier. For 6 years he lectured on mathematics and dialectics, apparently dividing his time between Oxford and Paris, and helped introduce the study of Aristotle. Edmund became one of Oxford's first lecturers with a Master of Arts, but was not Oxford's first Doctor of Divinity, and must have been something of a character in the eyes of the students. Long hours at night spent in prayer had the result that he often nodded off during his lectures. There is a long-established tradition that he utilized his lecture fees to build the Lady Chapel of St. Peter's in the East at Oxford. The site where he lived and taught was formed into a medieval academic hall in his name and eventually incorporated as the current College Street Edmund Hall. His mother influenced him towards self-denial and austerity, and this led to his taking up the study of theology. Though for some time Edmund resisted the change, he finally entered upon his new career between 1205 and 1210. He received ordination, took a doctorate in divinity and soon became known as a lecturer on theology and as an extemporaneous preacher. Sometime between 1219 and 1222 he was appointed vicar of the parish of Calner in Wiltshire and treasurer of Salisbury Cathedral. He held this position for 11 years, during which time he also engaged in preaching. In 1227 he preached the Sixth Crusade through a large part of England. Archbishop of Canterbury in 1233 came the news of Edmund's appointment, by Pope Gregory IX, to the Archbishopric of Canterbury. The chapter had already made 3 selections which the Pope had declined to confirm. Edmund's name had been proposed as a compromise by Gregory, perhaps on account of his work for the Crusade. He was consecrated on the 2nd of April 1234. Before his consecration Edmund became known for supporting ecclesiastical independence from Rome, maintenance of the Magna Carta and the exclusion of foreigners from civil and ecclesiastical office. Reluctant to accept appointment as archbishop, Edmund was persuaded when it was pointed out that if he refused, the Pope might very well appoint a foreign ecclesiastic. He chose as his chancellor Richard of Wyche, known to later ages as Saint Richard of Chichester. In the name of his fellow bishops Edmund admonished Henry III of England at Westminster, on the 2nd of February 1234, to heed the example of his father, John of England. A week after his consecration, he again appeared before the king with the barons and bishops, this time threatening Henry with excommunication if he refused to dismiss his councillors, particularly Peter des Roches, Bishop of Winchester. Henry yielded, and the favourites were dismissed. Hubert de Burgh was released and reconciled to the king, and soon the archbishop was sent to Wales to negotiate peace with Llywelyn the Great. Edmund's success, however, turned the king against him. Edmund was valued by the local people for his teaching, preaching, study, and his prayer, but his uncompromising stand in favour of good discipline in both civil and ecclesial government, of strict observance in monastic life, and of justice in high quarters brought him into conflict with Henry III, with several monasteries. and with the priests of Canterbury Cathedral. He claimed and exercised metropolitan rights of visitation. This was often challenged and he had to resort to litigation to maintain his authority, not the least with his own monastic chapter at Canterbury. Journey to Rome. Notwithstanding the gentleness of his disposition, Edmund firmly defended the rights of church and state against the exactions and usurpations of Henry III. In December 1237 Edmund set out for Rome to plead his cause in person. From this futile mission he returned to England in August 1238, where his efforts to foster reform were frustrated. Edmund submitted to the papal demands and, early in 1240, paid to the Pope's agents 1/5 of his revenue, which had been levied for the Pope's war against Emperor Frederick II. Other English prelates followed his example. The papacy then ordered that 300 English benefices should be assigned to Romans. In 1240, Edmund set out for Rome. At the Cistercian Pontigny Abbey in France he became sick, began travelling back to England, but died only 50 miles further north. On 16 November 1240, at the house of Augustinian canons at Soisy-Bouy, and was taken back to Pontigny. Veneration. In less than a year after Edmund's death, miracles were alleged to be wrought at his grave. He was canonized only 6 years after his death, in December 1246. His feast day is the 16th of November. A few years later, the first chapel dedicated to him, St. Edmund's Chapel, was consecrated in Dover by his friend Richard of Chichester. At Salisbury, a collegiate church and an altar in the cathedral were named after Edmund. St. Edmund's Catholic School in Portsmouth is named after him. Relics. Edmund's body was never translated to Canterbury, because the Benedictine community there resented what they regarded as Edmund's attacks on their independence. After his death he was taken back to Pontigny Abbey, where his main relics are now found in a Baroque reliquary tomb dating to the 17th century. An arm is enshrined in the chapel of Our Lady of the Assumption at St. Edmund's Retreat on Enders Island off the coast of Mystic, Connecticut. The retreat is operated by the Society of the Fathers and Brothers of St. Edmund. In 1853, the fibula of the Edmund's left leg was presented to St. Edmund's College, where, by Cardinal Wiseman, many local cures of serious illnesses were attributed to the intercession of St. Edmund. One of the earliest of these was of a student who nearly died after a fall in 1871. His complete healing led to the accomplishment of a vow to extend the beautiful Pujan chapel with a side chapel to honor the saint. The Islamic silk chasuble, with the main fabric probably made in Al-Andalus, that Edmund had with him at his death, remains in a local church, with a stole and maniple. Character. Edmund's life was one of self-sacrifice and devotion to others. From boyhood he practiced asceticism, such as fasting on Saturdays on bread and water, and wearing a hair shirt. After snatching a few hours' sleep, most of the night he spent in prayer and meditation. Works. Besides his Constitutions, issued in 1236, Edmund wrote Speculum Ecclesiae, Congregation of St. Edmund. Edmund's life inspired the formation of the Society of St. Edmund at Pontigny, France, in 1843 by Rev. Jean-Baptiste Mouard, who intended to keep St. Edmund's memory and life alive through faithful service, for the work of popular missions. The members also devote themselves to parochial work, to the education of youth in seminaries and colleges, to the direction of pious associations, and to foreign missions. Members of the society, based in Pontigny, fled to the United States in 1889 after widespread anti-clericalism seized France. The Society of St. Edmund settled in Winooski Park, Vermont, and established St. Michael's College in 1904, where the deeds and values of St. Edmund's life continue through fulfillment of the college's mission. The original mother house is at Pontigny, but since the expulsion of the religious orders the Superior General resided at Hitchin, England. In the early 20th century, the congregation has 2 houses in the United States. a missionary house and apostolic school at Swanton, Vermont, for the training of young men who wish to study for the priesthood and the religious life, and a college at Colchester, Vermont, with 12 fathers, 8 scholastics, and 100 pupils. Citations. ABCD Edmonds, Columba. St. Edmund Rich, The Catholic Encyclopedia. Volume 5, New York. Robert Appleton Company, 1909. The 26th of May 2013. J.I. Cato. The Early Oxford Schools in Aston, The History of the University of Oxford Volume 1, pp. 24-25. ABC, A Short Life of St. Edmund of Abingdon, Dover's Chapel of St. Edmund of Abingdon. Finds, John. St. Edmund of Abingdon, New York, Barnes & Noble Books. ISBN 1556197163. A.B. Fried, A.L. Handbook of British Chronology p. 233. St. Edmund, patron of our parish, Roman Catholic parish of St. Edmund of Abingdon, Millwall. ABC Hayward, John. St. Edmund of Abingdon, Parish Church of St. Wilfrid, Bognor. Walsh, A New Dictionary of Saints p. 169. http://i34.tinypig.com/dg6eek.jpg. Saint Severdame Unique Treasure at Con. Site, Hutch News, Hutchinson, Kansas, 24 May 2013. http://www.stedmanscollege.org/ http://www.stedmanscollege.org/asset/pujan_chapel.pdf C Chapel. The Art of Medieval Spain, AD 500-1200, an exhibition catalogue from the Metropolitan Museum of Art Libraries, No. 57.